topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
What's working on purpose anyway? Each week, we ponder the answer to this question. People ache for meaning and purpose at work, to contribute their talents passionately and know their lives really matter. They crave being part of an organization that inspires them and helps them grow into realizing their highest potential. Business can be such a force for good in the world, elevating humanity. In our program, we provide guidance and inspiration to help usher in this world we all want, working on purpose. Now, here's your host, Dr. Alise Cortez.
Welcome back to the Working on Purpose program, which has been brought to you with passion and pride since February of 2015. Thanks for tuning in this week. Great to have you. I am your host, Dr. Alise Cortez. If we've not met before and you don't know me, I'm a workforce advisor, organizational psychologist, management consultant, logotherapist, speaker, and author. My team and I at Gusto Now help companies to enliven and fortify their operations by building a dynamic, high-performance culture, inspirational leadership, and nurturing managers activated by meaning and purpose. Many organizations are not aware of how critical it is to invest in developing their leaders and managers, not just for their own effectiveness, but also to avoid burnout and keep them fulfilled, and so that they can measure and monitor the purpose experience in the organization to keep it working and as an operational imperative. All those things are available. And did you know that inspired employees outperform their satisfied peers by a factor of 2.25 to 1? In other words, inspiration is good for the bottom line. You can learn more about us and how we can work together at gusto-now.com or my personal site, alisecortez.com. Getting into today's program, we have with us Dr. Tim Elmore. He's the founder of Growing Leaders, an Atlanta-based nonprofit organization created to develop emerging leaders. His work grew out of 20 years serving alongside Dr. John Maxwell. He has written more than 38 books, which include Habitudes, Images That Form Leadership Habits and Attitudes, also A New Kind of Diversity, Making the Different Generations on Your Team a Competitive Advantage, and the one we're talking about today, The Future Begins with Z, 9 Strategies to Lead Generation Z as They Disrupt the Workplace. We'll be talking about who Gen Z is, what contributed to forming them and how they contribute to the workplace, and finishing by discussing a few of Tim's strategies to lead them. He joins us today from Atlanta. Dr. Elmore, a hearty welcome to Working on Purpose.
Thank you, Alise. It's an honor to be with you.
Likewise, sir. And I don't know where this is in the mix, if this is like 37 or 6 or whatever, but I really, really, really enjoyed this, my friend.
Good.
I really learned a lot. You taught me so much about this generation that I did not know. I'm excited to share this with our listeners and viewers. I have my own Gen Zer, my one daughter, she's 22.
Okay.
And I learned about, kind of her and such, and could really relate to what you taught me. So excited to dig in, shall we?
Yeah, let's do.
Okay. Well, first we got to start by celebrating your amazing life and career. I mean, first, come on, 20 years with John Maxwell. And then, your own background of developing leaders, and you've been, of course, focused on helping to develop and understand the generations. So let's just hear a little bit about like a sort of a smattering tour of that amazing life and career.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I did start working under John Maxwell right out of college. So I'm a very, very lucky
I'm
man.
sorry. I mean, what a terrible misfortune. Yeah.
Well, I always tell people if I don't do a good job today, it's my own fault because I had some great mentors.
Serious.
So worked for John for 20 years, but all the while John was teaching business leaders, faith-based leaders, nonprofit leaders. I kept thinking, we got to get this to the next generation. Mm-hmm. What if we could learn it at 18, not 38, before we messed up a company and a marriage and everything else, So I was always focused, even those years under John, at how could we get this to a young person? And when I say young person, maybe not 5 years old, but somewhere between teenagers and 20-somethings, where they're really making big decisions about their life and their career and their marriage. So that's what Growing Leaders was. I started in 2003. It's a nonprofit organization that partners with schools and youth organizations around the world. And we have been working with them to, alongside reading, writing, arithmetic, which they're already getting at school, really building life skills and leadership skills in that next gen. So this book was really written to that leader, business leader, teacher, coach, who may be getting a little frustrated with that young person that just joined the team because they're so different. And I'm trying to build a bridge between the young and the old so that we can really do the handoff we need to do.
Well, I really sorely needed, Tim. And, I'm out to help champion,
Yeah.
destination workplaces, create places, cultures of gusto, inspirational leaders. And to your point, I hear many leaders who are frustrated and don't
Yeah.
know how to handle and manage and lead this incoming generation, which is why I was thrilled to have you come on. And I was not super surprised to learn in your book that if for the average Gen Z employee, they're staying on the job for 2 years and 3 months,
Yeah.
which is actually not a super, short time, but it's not a very long time either.
Yeah. Yeah, it isn't. In fact, everybody intuitively knows the younger generations have a shorter attention span,
Mm-hmm.
get bored more quickly than perhaps older generations did. So yeah, they're kind of in and out. I heard a friend, a CEO of a company, say the corporate ladder has become the corporate lily pad. So they're hopping around from job to job like a lily pad. So that's why I argue in this book, if we're going to keep the good ones like we want to keep, we may have to change the way we lead and the platforms we build for them to flourish in and want to stay at the job.
Mm-hmm. I have a couple of Gen Zers working for me or with me, and they are rock stars.
Good.
I mean, just rock stars. And my daughter is 22. She's a rock star.
Yeah,
And so,
yeah.
what I want us to get out of this conversation and help our listeners and viewers with is learning how to tap into and unleash their genius,
Yes.
which I think
Yeah.
you do so beautifully in your book. So one of the many things I appreciated is when you kind of compare and contrast the different generations. And one of the things that you do is you compare more of the seasoned, longer term veterans that have been in the workplace for a while. And then, of course, these incoming younger rookies. And I thought it would be helpful if we could talk a little bit about some of that that contrast and
Yeah.
comparison, if we could.
Yeah, I would love to. First of all, you know this, you've already said it yourself. I really do believe in Generation Z. I've had my own share of frustrations because they are different than I am. And of course, I
Mhm.
want people to be like me,
It's easier, sure.
But yeah, but I take a challenger voice in this book. I challenge the assumptions we have that, kids today, they're lazy slackers. They're on their phones all the time. They show up late. They're wearing flip-flops, all those things. And sometimes those things do happen. But what I think I see happening is our view of authority is shifting right before our
Yes.
very eyes.
Yes.
And some of the respect that perhaps a typical president or CEO might want may not always be shown, but I'm going to contend it's not always disrespect. For instance, here's one. Older generations tend to believe that your position gives you the right to influence. If you're the
Right.
executive VP, you have the
Right.
right to influence. They might say, if they were honest, Gen Z that is, your connection gives you the right to influence. Connect with me, build a
Mhm.
relationship with me. Now,
Mhm.
I know some older people are going, well, I don't have time for that. Well, I don't know if we can afford not to do that. If
Yes.
we want to keep the good ones like you have, Alise, and me as well, we need to do that connection. So in these two columns I have, seasoned veterans certainly bring perspective from the past. We may have 30, 40 years in our career, but the Gen Zers come in with perspective on the future.
Mhm.
I found in my focus groups and my quantitative research, they see what's coming quicker than people 40 and over do. Um, we possess insights based on our past career. They possess intuition on what the future customer is going to look like. I am now tapping in to the Gen Zers on my team and saying, what do you think is coming? Well, here's what I do when I buy something. I'm thinking, that's the future right there.
Yeah.
So older folks, or I should say seasoned veterans, would say, well, older people have wisdom. And I believe that's true. Gen Z might say, yeah, but older folks could be irrelevant. And that is true as well.
Mhm.
One last thing. I think far too often, current leaders that may be over 40 would treat leadership like a gatekeeper. I'm the
Mhm.
gatekeeper of the power, the budget,
Yep.
the people.
Mhm.
And they would say, would you not act like a gatekeeper? Would you act like a guide?
Yeah.
Be my Sherpa guide who's walking me up the mountain, and together we're going to score reach these heights, these new heights. If we can shift the way we see it, it doesn't mean we're not good leaders. In fact, I think it will mean we're better. We're not relying on our position to lead. We're relying on our connection.
I've been saying for quite some time now, Tim, as I've continued to keep my finger on the pulse of the generations and they're emerging, is I really firmly believe, and I would imagine you might somewhat align with this, is I really do believe that every generation makes us better as a species.
Yes, they do.
They make a contribution. They pull us forward in a way, and that's why it's so uncomfortable, because that kind of growth is never comfortable. And one of the many things that I got from your book that I thought was so interesting along those lines, that I feel it seems that you're saying as well, and I believe I witnessed too, is the Gen Z population. Of course, that's the youngest population. Those of you listening and viewing now have what's called a fluid intelligence.
Yes.
And if we could speak a little bit to that, I thought that was quite a fascinating idea.
Yeah. Well, you're absolutely right. If I can just echo what you just said, Gen Z is going to make us better leaders. If nothing else happens, we're going to become better. I put early in the book, Generation Z is the sandpaper on my leadership I did not know I needed.
I think that's such a powerful quote that came from your friend. Yeah,
it is. So, Dr. Raymond Cattell, way back in the 1970s, did some brain research well before we ever had the fMRI. And he said in the first half of a long life, the first 40 years, we experience mostly fluid intelligence, which is what Gen Z has. Later in life, we experience crystallized intelligence. So fluid is about adaptation. Young people adapt very quickly. It's about creativity. They're often very, very creative, innovative, etc. When we're older, it's not that we're never creative again, but we're much better at clarifying what we know and summarizing what we know. I think it's why Harvard professors that are very old often get the best marks from the students, because they're able to say, don't pay attention to that, pay attention to that. This is what you need to know. So we need to capitalize on that fluid intelligence that let's say a 20-something brings in, that even though we're a bit frustrated, I think we need to become fascinated at what they're saying. And maybe we need to learn to use the words, help me understand, ... when we don't understand, rather than going, kids today, what are they talking about?
Right.
So I really urge the reader of this book, be the leader you need to be, but be open. One of the phrases I love to use is, I want to speak in a meeting as if I believe I'm right, but I want to listen as if I believe I'm wrong. That makes me a better listener. Yeah.
That's so powerful, Tim. So many powerful things you said in the book. One of the many things that I learned from your book that I really didn't fully understand before, when you were describing Gen Z, and this is what I wanted to focus on in this first segment, is you talk about how they're very advanced cognitively and biologically, but really quite behind socially and emotionally. Can you say a bit more about that?
Yes, absolutely. So those are the 4 quadrants that educators use to measure maturation.
Okay.
So biological growth, and Gen Z would be ahead. In fact, just think, listeners, they're reaching puberty at earlier ages. They're physically stronger, each generation, better athletes, etc. And then cognitively, they have put more in their brains at 12 years old than I had at 18 years old, I think.
Sure.
You do a sex talk with your child and they're teaching you something.
Yeah. Actually, it's like this. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So those 2 categories, they're advanced, but the ones they're behind in would be the social and emotional. And by the way, the pandemic did us no favors.
Right.
Where they were learning on a screen, that's great, but they weren't socializing. And so those interpersonal skills that a boss might really want, you might have to teach them. And you might be going, what, were your parents not teaching? No, they weren't. So I talk about, you tell me if you want to talk about this now, but one of the big ideas in one of the early chapters, I talk about the Peter Pan paradox. Would that be okay to?
Sure, go for it.
Okay. So it talks about this behind an advanced thing. So listeners, you know the character of Peter Pan. I'm sure you saw the movie or read the book or whatever. But Peter Pan was this winsome character, right? That was able to fly into London and sprinkle pixie dust everywhere and magical things happened, right? The other side of the coin was Peter Pan never wanted to grow up. He wanted to live in Neverland. It's just a metaphor, but I think we see this happening in the workplace today. The age of authority seems to be going down, meaning they're coming in without a title, but they have some authority. They know stuff that we don't know. But the age of maturity is going up. Alise, I say in the book, I've lost count of the number of employers that are saying 26 is the new 18. That's scary. So cognitively, yeah, they got it. But then you go, would you look me in the eyes, son? What would you talk to me and would you show up on time to the meeting? That would be nice. So some of those fundamental skills we're going to need to teach. So my takeaway on this, by the way, is simple and it's twofold. We're going to have to listen more than we ever used to listen, but we're going to have to coach more than we ever used to coach. If we're willing to do those two things, we're going to be able to win and keep those great Generation Z members that are coming to our office.
And I really appreciate that, because I certainly have gotten myself in trouble, Tim, in that I have been in front of executive leader groups, and where somebody will pop up and say, I just can't manage the Gen Z. And I'm like, I kind of get this boing sort of thing going on. And I'm like, well, I don't know what use you're going to be to the organization, because they're going to be them, and the millennials will be the majority in just a few years. And if you can't manage them, I don't know what contribution you are to the organization. And one of the things that you say in your book is that many CEOs have instructed their teams not to hire first-time job seekers, but let them cycle through their first job, and somebody else teach them some of these rudimentary skills, and then we'll pick them up the second job.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you're speaking to in your book, is there's a real opportunity, and with and through your strategies we'll talk about in the last segment, to really help them step up into that space where they can make that process of bringing them on board and getting them going and connected much more quick.
Yeah, I don't blame anyone for either approach. So wait for it to be the second job. I know friends that are executives are going, once they get past, that first 2 years, they're going to have their sea legs. But then I love the leaders that are willing to say, I'm willing to coach. I'm willing to get them ready. So in the book, I talk about Orange Leaf Frozen Yogurt as an example. They're a company that sells frozen yogurt, and they were noticing they were hiring 17, 18, 19-year-old kids, and they were quitting after a year and a half, because that's what happens in fast food restaurants. So they decided to pivot, and they said, we want our goal for those young employees for this to be the best first job you could ever have. Yeah, you're probably going to go on to something else, but we want to build a platform for you to launch. Well, that was so winsome to that interviewee who was in the teenage years, maybe 21, and saying, really, you want to help me get started? And so Orange Leaf said, well, tell me what you really want to grow in here. And if a job candidate said, well, I want to learn marketing. Oh, you need to meet Nancy. She heads up our marketing. She's fabulous. You'll learn so much. Or I want to learn bookkeeping. Oh, Hal, need to meet Hal. He's going to help you there. But you can see how they're adding value to those employees as well as getting work from them. And you can guess what they found. Those employees stayed longer because they're getting mentored. It's just good behavioral science. But if we'll be willing to make the investment, I think we're going to see a return on that investment.
I'm in, Tim. Let's do it. Let's grab our first break while we let our listeners and viewers chew on what we've talked about so far and what really distinguishes who Gen Z is. I'm your host, Dr. Alise Cortez. We're on the air with Dr. Tim Elmore. He's the founder of Growing Leaders, an Atlanta-based nonprofit organization created to develop emerging leaders. After the break, we're going to talk more about how Gen Z was formed and shaped and what they bring to the workplace that's different. We'll be right back.
Dr. Alise Cortez is a management consultant specializing in meaning and purpose, an inspirational speaker and author. She helps companies visioneer for greater purpose among stakeholders and develop purpose-inspired leadership and meaning-infused cultures that elevate fulfillment, performance, and commitment within the workforce. To learn more or to invite Alise to speak to your organization, please visit her at alisecortez.com. Let's talk about how to get your employees working on purpose. This is Working on Purpose with Dr. Alise Cortez. To reach our program today or to open a conversation with Alise, send an email to Alise, A-L-I-S-E, at alisecortez.com. Now, back to Working on Purpose.
Thanks for staying with us and welcome back to Working on Purpose. I'm your host, Dr. Alise Cortez. as I am dedicated to helping create a world where organizations thrive because their people thrive, and they're led by inspirational leaders that help them find and contribute their greatness. And we find ways to do business that betters the world. I keep researching and writing my own books. So one of my latest came out called The Great Revitalization: How Activating Meaning and Purpose Can Radically Enliven Your Business. And I wrote it to help leaders understand today's evolving, very diverse and discerning workforce. And then I offer you 22 best practices to equip you to provide that in your leadership and your culture. You can find my books on Amazon or my website, alisecortez.com. If you are just joining us, my guest is Tim Elmore. He's the author of The Future Begins with Z, 9 Strategies to Lead Generation Z as They Disrupt the Workplace. So for this segment, Tim, I wanted to help our listeners and viewers understand how Gen Z became who they are, those critical inputs and influences that have really shaped them. And I love how you also do that in your book for all the other generations too.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I was surprised to learn, I don't think I understood this, was how important and central mental health is for Gen Z.
Yeah, it's off-putting to some older people saying, what do you mean you got mental health problems? Go come to work, leave your problems at home, So Generation Z, for the listener that might go, I'm not exactly sure who that segment is. So social scientists have been naming these generations for many generations. So there was Gen X, who grew up in the 60s and 70s, and then Gen Y, the millennials in the 80s and 90s. Gen Z would be those who really only have a memory of the 21st century. They grew up in the 21st century. So the early ones would be right about the turn of the century, and they have gone through, even as children, 3 economic downturns, mass shootings. Oh my gosh, the last few years, there have been more mass shootings in America than we had days in the year. So I'm not saying everything's dark, but I'm just saying there's a cynicism that accompanies Gen Z that wasn't a part of the millennials. They're a little bit jaded because when they look around them, they go, are there any leaders worth following? Alise, I love what you're up to. You're building better, more healthy leaders worth following. So am I. But they're looking around going, we're looking for them. So anyway, that would be the demographic that makes up Gen Z, young adults and teens. Yeah.
So I definitely also appreciate it. We all understand that this particular demographic grew up with, their devices in their hands, which of course has deepened their addictions and their connection to it. But the other thing that you just hinted out there that I think is so, so important, excuse me, which speaks to part of the disconnect in today's workplace is their distrust of authority, because they've seen, the raw dirt on so many leaders that, haven't gotten it done right or well. And they're like, why should I follow someone like that? You don't get my loyalty just because you have a title or the position. And I think that's critical that we showcase this for leaders, because they're seeing that as disrespect. And on the other side, what these young people also want is respect.
Yeah, it's true. It's a mutual thing. So in the book, I talk about when there's a rub, when there's a little bit of a conflict. And I try to be really practical. So I give a lot of acronyms that will help you remember the steps. The acronym I give that leads to that respect piece, Alise, is a leg. So for years and years, we've used this little phrase, well, this is the leg you got to stand on, right? So ALEG reminds me how I need to approach a Gen Zer, perhaps, if I'm just seeing something I don't understand. They've done something wrong, maybe. So the letter A reminds me I need to start with asking. Not telling them what they've done wrong, but asking. And like the phrase I just said, can you help me understand? Or tell me your thought process behind that decision you made. When we ask, they feel valued. Isn't it true? When you get asked a question, you go, oh, really? You want to know? The letter L reminds me, I got to listen. It does very little good to ask any questions if we're not willing to do the work of listening. And when we listen, they feel heard. I love what David Augsburger once said. Being heard is so close to being loved that for the average person, it's indistinguishable. So you can love them appropriately just by listening to them. The letter E is empathize. That's a piece of art that I'm learning right now. I hate to admit it, but just learning to communicate. I get it. I understand you now. I'm seeing what you're saying. And maybe I learned to say things like, oh my gosh, I had no idea that happened. Or I bet that you felt awful when that happened. So here it is. Ask, they feel valued. Listen, they feel heard. Empathize, they finally feel understood by you. And maybe that 10 to 12 minute piece of time, you've now earned your right to practice the letter G, which is to guide them. And that's what you wanted to do in the first place. But you did it with a bridge you built, not a badge you wear. I just think that's the way to the future here. Yeah.
Me too. How beautiful. And so much more civilized and elevated. And again, that goes
Yes.
back to what
Yeah.
I said is this is how each generation makes us better.
Yeah, it's true. You're right.
Yeah. One of the things that you also did that I thought was helpful is you gave us some various terms that really summarize Gen Z's world. Of course, they include things like instant access and
Yeah.
multicultural, immediate feedback, cancel
Yeah.
culture.
Yeah.
But can you talk a little bit more about some of those things that really distinguish and have helped mold Gen Z in that list?
Yes, Elise, these terms, thanks for bringing it up, are just simple two-word terms that when I look at them, I get a brief glance at the typical, and nobody's typical, but at the ordinary Gen Zer, a world that they grew in that was instant access. They have not had to wait for a television program on, if they're on, unless they're on a network TV show. On demand, everything is on demand, a quick click. Immediate feedback. They do expect you to text them right back if that sort of thing. Cancel culture. I want to talk about that for just a minute.
Yep.
I understand that we needed a dose of cancel culture. Harvey Weinstein needed to be canceled for sure. However, there's been a pattern where that's been weaponized, and it's not been helpful for Gen Z or for leaders that are out there. When we practice a consistent form of cancel culture, it starts training our brain to go, oh, hardship, best way to face hardship is just cancel it, just get rid of it.
Yeah.
And I'm going, no. On the college campus, you might need to hear that speech that you don't agree with, but maybe you're going to be forced to think a little bit more critically.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'll stop there instead of waxing eloquent here, but it really, those terms help me just wrap my arms around that younger generation that I want to understand to do well in the future.
One of the other things that I thought was really interesting, and let me share that I forget how it came up, but somewhere in there I was prompted to ask my daughter who were her role models, who did she really admire?
Yeah.
And I was surprised to learn that, my daughter is a graduate. She's a psychology graduate. She's now adulting. She has her first job.
Yep.
But she also has been a bodybuilder and competed as a bodybuilder.
Wow.
And all of her role models were fitness experts
Interesting.
who have a TikTok channel.
Yes.
All of them.
Of course.
All of them.
Yeah.
And so one thing that you said in your book that was interesting is that, one of the great ironies of Gen Z is that they value authenticity,
Yeah.
but they live in such an artificial world. And
Yeah.
that's what she also, I asked, what are these people, asked ChatGPT, what do these people have in common? They're authentic, they're real, they're raw, they share their real stories of their lives. That's the authenticity piece that she seems to,
Yes.
and I asked her afterwards, she said, that's part of the draw for them.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And that's the oxymoron, though. They long for authenticity. I think the last three generations all said, we want authentic leaders. We want authenticity. And yet the same generation, not all, but many, might take 50 selfies to get one good one and then filter it, doctor it up, before posting. I'm going, wait, that's not authentic. That's not raw and real. So there is both. And the average Gen Zer would admit it. They go, I know. We're such an oxymoronic, but all of us are. We just need to admit it. So one of the terms, I actually did a book on this a number of years ago. It sounds very derogatory, and I do not mean for it to sound derogatory, but it's a description of the culture we live in today. The term is artificial maturity. And here's what artificial maturity is, the summation of. I think kids today are overexposed to information far earlier than they're ready. I think everyone would agree with that.
Yes.
But they're underexposed to firsthand experiences later than they're ready. So I was working a job at age 12, and my grandpa before me, I think, started at age 9 on the farm. Today, parents might say, focus on academics. Don't get your first job until you're done with college.
Yeah.
Well, if done with college is the first job I've got, they are going to not know how to be professional at the office at all.
Yeah.
So, and it's not their fault, but just know you might see something that looks real. That 12-year-old might be able to download the latest software. He knows all of his math tables, but that same boy at 16 might not be able to look an adult in the eye and have a conversation because we taught one skill set on a screen, but not some of those real life skills that, again, you and I, Alise, are on the same page. We got to build this into the next generation. Yeah.
Yeah, I started working for my parents when I was 13 in the restaurant business, and that really helped me handle, and learn, to your point, you said that Gen Z suffers a lot from self-esteem. And if we focus more on developing their capacities, their capabilities, then their self-esteem will naturally grow.
No
and
doubt.
so I got that by working. And I know many parents who don't want their kids to work during high school or even maybe college, which I do think is a disservice. And now it's playing out.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I saw in your book that was really interesting, a couple of mega characteristics that you used to describe them are a high sense of agency.
Yeah.
Being able to get things done and make things happen, but and also a high sense of anxiety.
Yeah. So I'll comment on that if that's okay.
Please.
These two, again, they seem so mutually exclusive, but the high sense of agency is a sense of self-sufficiency. When we talk about a free agent, we mean that player on the ball field gets to go wherever he wants to now, right? So a sense of agency is, they feel like they can do it on their own. They feel sufficient. They feel empowered. But the anxiety, which is the other side of the same coin, is they might struggle with mental health issues. They might want to call their supervisor before the day begins and say, I'm not coming in today. I'm not my best self today. And I want to say, I'm not my best self either, but I'm at the office right now. So again, I sound like your grandpa, but both of these are oxymoronic, but they're coexisting. And here's my belief. Call me the master of the obvious, but both of these, high agency, high anxiety, were fostered by the smartphone. I feel sufficient because I know everything on this little device, but it's overwhelmed me with all of the notifications I'm getting every day. So, I think we got ambushed by it. I think we got ambushed by the smartphone.
I've had other guests on my show talking about just that. So I want to finish this segment here, just helping our listeners and viewers understand a little bit what you shared with us in your book, some specific things that we learned about Gen Z and work, and including that they are the most diverse population at work. 48% of them are not white. They all own a smartphone, or most all of them, 96%. They're smart consumers. Salary is a high motivator. Lots of different things in here that are just really, really interesting. Less than half identified as purely heterosexual, meaning their attractions are fluid. Fiscally conservative. Their top concern is income, and so many really interesting things that I thought were fascinating about Gen Z.
Yeah, they really are an interesting generation. They're not just a continuation of the millennials, which oftentimes, if we're not learned or studied, we might it's another generation just like the last one. But they're really their own people. Millennials were idealistic. Gen Z might be a little pessimistic, and you can't blame them. So we need to make sure we allow these young people to come in as individuals. I like to say we need to play chess, not checkers with them. Checkers pieces all look alike and they move alike. Chess pieces, you better know what they're all about and what moves they make. So the best leaders I know play chess, not checkers, with their people. They get to know their personality, their strength, and their generation.
Great stuff, Tim. Let's grab our last break here while our listeners and viewers chew on what we've been talking about, what has really gone into forming Gen Z. I'm your host, Dr. Alise Cortez. We've been on the air with Dr. Tim Elmore, the founder of Growing Leaders, an Atlanta-based nonprofit organization created to develop emerging leaders. After the break, we're going to talk a bit more about just some of the strategies that Tim puts forth on how to best lead this particular generation, as well as a few more things that Gen Z brings to the workplace. We'll be right back.
Dr. Alise Cortez is a management consultant specializing in meaning and purpose, an inspirational speaker and author. She helps companies visioneer for greater purpose among stakeholders and develop purpose-inspired leadership and meaning-infused cultures that elevate fulfillment, performance, and commitment within the workforce. To learn more or to invite Alise to speak to your organization, please visit her at alisecortez.com. Let's talk about how to get your employees working on purpose. This is Working on Purpose with Dr. Alise Cortez. To reach our program today or to open a conversation with Alise, send an email to Alise, A-L-I-S-E, at alisecortez.com. Now, back to Working on Purpose.
Thanks for staying with us and welcome back to Working on Purpose. I am your host, Dr. Alise Cortez. As you know by now, this program is dedicated to empowering and inspiring you along your journey to realize more of your potential and make you into a greater, more effective, inspiring leader. If you want to learn more about the Gusto Now Academy for leaders and individuals on various journeys alike, make your way to gusto-now.com and then go to the training tab and you can learn about the academy there. If you are just now joining us, my guest is Tim Elmore. He's the author of The Future Begins with Z, 9 Strategies to Lead Generation Z as they Disrupt the Workplace. So one of the other many things that I found interesting as you characterize Gen Z and kind of what they bring, some upsides, as you say, to Gen Z, as this really high interest in entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that they have such a strong focus on social justice for the marginalized.
Yeah.
I very much align with that.
Yeah.
They have a higher sense of agency, as we've been talking about, than past youth. And they're natural hackers. This is really interesting.
Yeah.
You can dig into and discover how things work, and a keener interest in leadership than previous generations. These are really quite interesting.
Yeah,
I'd
they
love
are.
for you to speak to a few of those.
Yeah, those are not only interesting, they make me hopeful.
Yes,
Hopeful and optimistic.
yes.
So I know leaders listening, it's easy to see the downside, how they're not like you, but I'm telling you, they bring, I think, what the workplace needs. And they are the sandpaper on our leadership that will polish us up as leaders. But Alise, if you remember, I tell some stories in the book.
Mhm.
And one of the stories I tell early on is my friend Colin. I've known Colin since he was in high school. And he graduated, a very smart high school graduate. And so he went off to MIT. Not a bad gig. He did very well at MIT. And so he had a number of job offers when he got finished. Well, he decided to move to Detroit, Michigan to work for one of the big 3, General Motors.
Mhm.
So he went into automaking. They put him in the smart car division, which was a smart move. But Colin, as a young 22-year-old, looked around and saw all kinds of things that they could do better. Now, you could already think, now that'd be off-putting. If you're 22, I'm 52, what are you doing, buddy? But Colin writes him down. And I might add, he's very respectful. He would never do anything arrogant or haughty or anything like that. But Colin took this list of ideas to his supervisor, and he didn't get a great review. His supervisor, hey, buddy, we didn't bring you in to give us any ideas. You keep your head down, keep your nose to the grindstone, just do your work. Well, Colin, I'm sure, said, yes, sir. But he went back to his desk and he decided, this is an audacious Gen Z type move, to email the CEO of General Motors, Mary Barra.
Mhm.
And he writes a note, dear Mary, this is Colin. I got some ideas that might make GM better. And he thought they could do professional development better, and they probably could, do this system better, that process better. Well, she emails him back.
Mm.
She replies back and says, Colin, these are really good ideas. Let me take them to my executive team. So she takes them to her executive team. They agree. These are really good ideas. But as you can imagine, when those ideas make their way down the organizational chart and they get to that middle manager, that supervisor of Colin's, they die on the vine again.
Mhm.
In fact, Colin was told, you need to be around here 8 years before you get to lead anything.
Yeah.
Well, you might as well have told him to leave.
Mhm.
Within a year, Colin quits, and he's not a quitter, but he quits. He has started he's the entrepreneur. He has started 3 companies, just sold one of them, so he's doing quite well financially. He just started a new one called Avatar Robotics, where you can pick up something in Orlando and something moves in Sacramento. And I do not know how it works, but I'm thinking this is a great example of what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
bring some magic. Now, not everybody's Colin, for sure. In fact, sometimes you may find one you go, I'm still looking for that gold inside. Keep looking. But I think they bring something like this with that same spirit. Let's do something new at work. And so I talk about Maggie in the book. Yeah, I think you saw that Maggie story.
I
Maggie
did.
saw the need for schools in Madagascar. And so she makes school buildings with 3D printers. I would not know where to start.
Right.
She's done it. Anne Makasinski. Anne had a Facebook pal when she was in high school. She's no longer in high school now, but she was interacting with this friend in the Philippines. And she asked her friend how she was doing one time. And her friend said, well, I'm flunking all my classes. Well, Anne said, how could you be flunking? You're smarter than I am. And her friend explained that the village where she lived, it was not Manila. She said, we don't have any electricity. So when the sun goes down, I can't do my homework and I'm not finishing my projects. Well, I probably would have said, I'll pray for you, or something like that. But here's what Anne did. Anne was a science nut. She creates, this is not a joke, this is a real story. She creates a flashlight the power's generated from the body heat from your hand. You hold it and the light goes on. And she creates it. She wins a science fair award, as you can imagine, sends it over to her friend. Her friend starts passing classes. She then developed one that could be like a helmet.
Headlamp, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. And then real quick, I need to tell you about Kenton Lee, who as a 22-year-old went to a country in Africa, in a developing nation, and noticed that the kids there either didn't have shoes or they were wearing shoes that had the toes cut out because their feet were growing on the shoes.
Yeah.
And he goes, well, what's up with this? Why don't you get new shoes? They go, we can't get new shoes. Kenton invented the shoe that grows. That's what it's called. And it's 3 different parts that can grow with your foot all the way from elementary school through high school. And I'm thinking, this is so encouraging to me. Ideas that I would not think.
Right.
So anyway, listeners, just take heart. If you can stick with them and somehow coach them up, but then listen up. I'm telling you, I think we have a bright future. I really do.
I do too. And it's dang off the charts inspiring, Tim.
Yeah.
And so that's part of why I wanted to have you on is what I want is for these leaders to recognize, I know this is uncomfortable. I know this is hard. And this idea of, as you say, Adam Grant talks about this democratization of the workplace where there's a power shift between the organization and the employee now. And of course, leaders don't like that. Who wants to give up power and authority and control? Yeah. But when you do, this is the kind of stuff that you get rewarded with. And so I'm really excited to, I mean, my Gen Zers, this is the kind of stuff they do with me. Yeah. We haven't quite developed, schools through 3D printing just yet, but give me until next week.
Yes,
maybe.
That's right. Yes.
But, so let's just do this. You gave us 9 strategies in your book on how to really lead effectively. Of course, we don't have time to get to all of them. So I want to get just a couple of them. And I want to start, if you could share, I thought the idea of the strategy of the welcome wagon to make these new incoming Gen Zers want to stay was really powerful. Can you bring that general strategy to life for us?
Absolutely. I'll try to do this in just a few minutes here, but this is crucial that we get it down. So many people are losing Generation Zers, even if they stay, because they didn't begin well. I believe we need to make that first week unforgettable. I know that sounds like, what are we, a youth group here with balloons? And you don't have to be a youth group, but I'm telling you, if you can make that first day or first week unforgettable, you've got something. But Alise, I believe it actually begins before that. I think it begins at the interview process. I think the interview process, at least as far as Gen Z goes, needs to be a two-way street.
Absolutely.
The hiring managers not just asking a bunch of questions of them, but they are also, questions are coming back. So I offer another acronym, and it's PERKS, P-E-R-K-S. I believe aside from, can you do the job, Josh, we need to be asking, letter P, what are your preferences? When you come to work, what would you prefer? And this is not strong. It's not expectations. It's not demands. It's just, what would you like to see? What would you wish for? And they might say, I'd love a Coke machine in the dining room. Oh, that's neat. We can do that, But finding out their preferences tells you a lot about who they are, what they wish for, and it may inform how you connect with them. The letter E is expectations. That's stronger than preferences. I assume this will be true, and you can learn a lot about a Gen Zer. On the upside, it may tell you right then and there, hey, this is not going to work out. I'm sorry, that's never going to happen. I need to walk you to the door. I wish you the best. But expectations, here's my belief. Conflict expands based on the distance between expectations and reality. And unless we talk about them up front, we're going to see trouble in 6 months when they're gossiping in the break room when we should have solved that problem early on. The letter R is requirements. Alise, this probably sounds crazy, but Gen Z is so strong based on the input from social media. They have demands that we're going to march for this cause in March or whatever. I don't know. And you just need to get ready. They are social justice people, which is not a bad thing, but you need to make sure that those demands, you either talk about them right up front or say, I'm so sorry, that's not going to happen. The letter K is keys. I have found it so helpful to find out the keys to their heart. Now, this is a 5-minute conversation. It's not 50 minutes, but what makes you tick? What are your hobbies? What do you love?
What do you care about?
Yeah. And minimally, we got hallway conversation now. If we'd hire them, hey, how about those Cubs? And then the letter S, of course, is salary, which you probably posted on the website. But I have found too many times you got to still talk about it because they're wanting something. And by the way, I didn't say this in the book, but more and more parents are joining their Gen Zer at the job interview. It's a little bit scary and a little bit crazy, but mama wants to negotiate the compensation package for junior. So anyway, perks may be a great handle for you to add to your interview process. Yeah.
Amazing, Tim. There's so much more we could talk about. And that's why readers and listeners, you just got to pick up the book, right? Because there's just so much for you to learn here. You have a chapter dedicated to critical conversations and offering tough feedback, and really situate how feedback can be really hard for Gen Z because that's not at all what they've been conditioned to receive. And so it's really difficult to give it to them. And I loved your whole velvet and brick sort of analogy. We don't really have time to talk about that, but I just wanted to sort of cue that up and tease our listeners and viewers. I think it's just brilliant, Tim. So I also do want to situate that, as we said, what Gen Z wants from their leaders, you say, is community, respect, curiosity.
Yeah.
So
We've
if you
got
could
to be that.
speak
I
a
will
little
say
bit to that, and then I'll
Okay.
ask you to close for us.
Well, they register as the loneliest generation on the planet. Now, all generations are a bit lonely right now, depending on how old you are. You might get, I'm lonely too. But the irony is they are well connected on the device, the portable device, but they're always not doing well with community in person. Why wouldn't the team at the job provide some of that community where we feel like we belong to this work and this mission, but also these people? So community is huge. And then you also brought up the whole idea of they want respect. Very often my generation would say, well, you need to earn my respect, Junior. But they're saying, why don't we all respect each other from day one? And actually, that's a great question.
It
I
is.
think we need to do. So I argue for the idea that we begin with belief. I'm not going to begin with suspicion that 22-year-old doesn't know what he's doing. In fact, the last 22-year-old I hired, I said, listen, I'm going to begin with belief. I believe you're going to add some incredible value. In fact, I'm probably going to need to learn some things from you. But that so helped the reciprocation of that belief. So I am just really, really an advocate of that. And so I'll stop there. But they really want that respect, the community, the curiosity. Those are the three things that if you can practice that, leaders, you're going to win them at the heart level.
So, Tim, I'm so grateful to have met you. And I learned, as I said, a ton out of your book. I'm so grateful to share with my listeners and viewers across the world. Say in about 30 seconds, what would you like to leave our listeners and viewers with?
Oh, gosh. Well, I'm hoping what I've said makes sense, but a quick 30-second story. I share in the book what happened to my generation when we were young. We all know that NASA landed a man on the moon in July of 1969, an incredible feat that no one had ever done. But do you know who actually did it? When JFK said, let's put a man on the moon in 1961 and 1962, NASA didn't even have the technology to do such a thing. So they quickly had to acquire a bunch of technology. Well, the guys that were there that were 45, 50, 55 years old didn't really understand it. Guess who understood it? The interns, the young employees in their 20s. So slowly but surely, the NASA leaders were turning authority over to these young people. Get this. The average age of the operator at the control center, 27 years old. And the guy that actually said go, not no, to put Neil Armstrong on the moon, Jack Garman, 23 years old. The older generation served as sim soups, simulator supervisors. They were coaching and mentoring, but they turned those young people loose to do something. We did a moonshot and we did it. So here's what I would say, listeners. What's your moonshot? And could we empower these Gen Zers to be those operators that actually pull it off for the organization?
Oh, way to bring it home, Tim Elmore. Okay, listeners and viewers, you are going to want to learn more about Tim Elmore and the work that he and his team are doing at Growing Leaders, plus his 38 other books, etc. You can visit his website, timelmore.com. It's TIMLELMORE, timelmore.com. Last week, if you missed the live show, you can always catch it via recorded podcast. We were on air with Monica Pierre, who gave us a commanding performance on the power of learning to tell a story to share inspiring communications. She talked about putting change, fear, and diminishment on trial. Next week, we'll be on air talking to Ryan Gottfredson, talking about his book, The Elevated Leader, Level Up Your Leadership Through Vertical Development. See you then. And together, let's lean in and learn how to create destination workplaces where people thrive while doing business in a way that betters the world. Let's work on purpose.
We hope you've enjoyed this week's program. Be sure to tune into Working on Purpose, featuring your host, Dr. Alise Cortez, each week on W4CY. Together, we'll create a world where business operates conscientiously, leadership inspires impassioned performance, and employees are fulfilled in work that provides the meaning and purpose they crave. See you there. Let's work on purpose.